Ladies and gentlemen, here we are in Northern California at a secret location, and I'm here with Andy Jackson, and of course I'm Cactus Pete, often bitter, sometimes sweet. And we're going to dialogue for about 10 or 15 minutes regarding the end game of the Occupy movement. Okay, we've been unofficially authorized to take off the disguise of what's going to happen, what's coming down the road here. And the occupiers have been going on for several months now. And let's turn to Andy here and just give us a few thoughts of what you've observed and what you're feeling on the Occupy movement at the moment.
Well, to be fair, I'm not completely familiar with it. I've been down to the protest three or four times, and I've spent some time down there, but I haven't talked to any of the leaders per se. And the only information I have about them is what I generally read and the protests that they have vocalized while I was there. So the things that I noticed that they're interested in is that there's a general backlash against the government, and that they feel that that the privileged elite few, the 1%, are getting all the gravy, and the 99% are getting the shaft, and that's that's something most people have known for a long time, but they're becoming more and more outraged at the egregious acts that the government is doing on behalf of the elite.
Andy, with the work that you've done, do you feel that this Occupy movement and the timing is imperative? Because if it wasn't being done now, pretty soon there wouldn't be an opportunity to actually do anything at all. With the amount of
there's always opportunity to do things, but as far as people protesting, it's an opportunity to look in the mirror and decide what the issues really are, and everybody can come together on the same issues. I mean, the right, the left, it doesn't matter which side you're on. It doesn't matter whether you're a Tea Partier or an occupier or an End the Fed person or a Ron Paul person. It doesn't matter whether you're an Obama person. The bottom line is a lot of people are upset about what's going on. So just come together on what common goals would be, and then go about trying to find a solution to accomplish those goals.
Well, what I meant by that, let me rephrase that, is as far as the timing goes, there's so many people that have lost their homes, and there's a whole lot of people that are on the verge of the chopping block. So that's sort of what I meant along those lines. And you explained pretty well how there's reasons for everybody almost across the entire board, the spectrum, to come together for this general strike. As I recall, we had a conversation once, and I've been talking about the general strike for a long time from a spiritual standpoint, that it's been given that the 40-day general strike will set free the animals, and so too Leonard Peltier, who's been in prison for 36 years as probably the world's #1 spiritual prisoner. He represents, of course, the 500-year resistance. And there's a piece of paper in his prison cell called the Constitution. Some of us are pretty clear it was the Iroquois Native Americans that pretty much gave us this Constitution a long time ago. So on your show, you discuss a lot of things regarding the Constitution, and yet we see that in the courts, they seem to disregard all this. So you made a statement to me once. You said, Cactus Pete, you need at least 20% of the people to get on board in order to have a general strike. And I responded, I says, well, listen here, Andy. I said, isn't it true that 95% of us are kind of being screwed and tattooed 5 different ways at least? And most anybody would agree. And so now we have this movement, and of course now it's time to give it some stronger direction. And that direction is coming up with this general strike slated for the 12th of December. And they're going to shut down the whole West Coast. And you said you hadn't been down to a lot of the occupies. I've been to UC Davis, I've been to Sacramento, I've been to Oakland, San Francisco, Berkeley, and Santa Rosa. So I've been to all of those numerous times. And they claim that there's not one leader, but there's this energy. And so one thing you would probably emphasize, I'm thinking, would be that the court system needs to be brought into line with some respect to the inhabitants.
Well, like I said, if the occupiers want to get together and decide that there's some kind of goal that they're going to have, let's say their goal is to have the government not be more fair in the distribution of wealth, all right? I mean, everybody understands that you can't give the bankers a bailout. I mean, that's a given. And at the time when the Congress did vote to give the bankers a bailout, you had 92%, I believe, of the people on polls showing that they did not want the bailout. So this country is a republic, and yet it acts like a democracy. And a democracy is mob rule, where 51% get their way. And obviously, in this instance, it wasn't even a democracy. I mean, you have 92% people are against it, and it happens anyway. Which means that, what we have is a rule of an oligarchy, a small group of people that are telling everybody else what to do for their own benefit.
Now, do you feel this oligarchy is based within this country, or does it have an international flavor to it?
Well, I'd say it has an international flavor to it. And it was very interesting in the bailout to see that some of the congressmen and senators wanted to place a restriction that the money could not be exported out of the country. In other words, no foreign interest could get bailout money. And they said no to that. Which means, obviously, the money is going to foreign interests.
Well, isn't it true that people in our history like Abraham Lincoln and John F. Kennedy were, I'm not sure, but I believe this is correct, I'd like to know your thoughts, were basically executed for printing American notes.
Yes.
And after the JFK assassination execution, an additional 254 witnesses to his execution in Dallas that day eventually found their way into the morgue. Is that about right?
Well, I don't remember seeing figures that high, but there was a lot of people died who were witnesses to that.
254.
And what happened in Lincoln's day was that he issued greenbacks, which was a big no-no if you're a banker who wants the authority to issue all of the paper, worthless paper, and then you're going to issue it, you're going to create it from thin air and get the government to borrow it. And Lincoln went to the bankers, and the bankers told him, we'll loan you money for your war at 24% interest.
24%?
24% interest. And so he lamented with his counsel on what to do, and one of his generals said, why don't you just print your own money? Well, that's what he did, and interestingly, a lot like Kennedy, he was assassinated by, a man with three names, John Wilkes Booth, who assassinated him while his Secret Service took a holiday. Now, even in those days, the Secret Service was supposed to guard you if you were the president, and they left their posts while Wilkes went in and assassinated the president.
Isn't that sort of the same thing that happened more or less with the Kennedy in Dallas?
Yeah, Kennedy's driver, instead of hitting the gas after the first shot, slowed down. I saw that. So you have a situation where, very high level corruption is going on, and the people that are in power are the people that make the money. It's like, we all know that, the guys that have the gold rule. That's it. So if you can create money from thin air like a banker, then I guess you can hire assassins to kill people that get in the way of your plans. And Kennedy issued an executive order whereby the government was going to print treasury notes and quit borrowing money from the Federal Reserve. Because why would you borrow money from the Federal Reserve, a private group of bankers, when you can just print your own money up and then you'd have no interest to pay back?
There's so much insanity going on, like Andy Jackson here. He's one of the smarter fellows I've come across in this country, having traveled back and forth across this land 2 or 3 or 4, maybe 10 or 15 times. talked to patriot groups and Occupy groups and Tea Party people, the whole 9 yards. And there's good people in all these arenas. But what needs to happen now is we need to find a solution. We need to pull the plug on all this insanity. And before I'm going to go into this, I want to ask Andy one more thing, and that is, you mentioned a minute ago that certain government people have had some sort of a document signed saying that the bailout money would not go to foreign interests, but at the same time, tell us, isn't the Federal Reserve and these international bankers out of the country, basically?
Well, the Federal Reserve is a corporation, and all corporations have to apply to the government for their privilege of operating as a corporation. And when they apply to the government, they have to list the owners. They have to list the shareholders.
Who's the owners of the Fed?
And the Fed has never listed its owners. So there you go. They're a private corporation that has never listed their owners. What a shock. Anyway, the point is what can people do who are supporters of Occupy or want to make a change? And, to me, one of the first things that they can do is study this book, which is the U.S. Constitution. Because this is kind of like the rules for what the government can and can't do. And you're going to find in there that the government Congress does not have any authority to give the Federal Reserve the right to print money. That would be treason, because only Congress can coin money, and what they issue in paper today is not coins, and only metal can become coins. So, the idea is that if you don't understand the Constitution and why the congressmen and the senators and the president and the treasurer and the judicial department and the Supreme Court, why they're committing treason and why they're, going against the rule book that they all are required to take an oath to support and defend, then how are you going to make a case?
Well, I'll tell you, this thing right here called the Constitution, most everybody knows the word. They've actually maybe held this at one time, but I find that very few people actually understand it. Even those that claim to understand it, especially a lot of these lawyers, which are beholden to the Bar Association, the BAR, B-A-R, British Attorney Registry. And we know about lawyers. The acronym for lawyer is lying at will yields excellent revenues. So if you want to learn how to comprehend this book, one place you can go is right here on the bottom. It's called RoninTruth.blogspot. I'll leave it up there for a second. I'll spell it RONIN truth.blogspot, and that's your site. And they're YouTubes, so you don't have to do a lot of reading. You can listen.
Well, you can get to my YouTube site from there. My YouTube site is Imma Freeman, IMMAFREEMANN.
Now, another place you can go is you can just Google this man right here. I'm going to show you that picture, and that's Sheriff Richard Mack, M-A-C-K. Now, Sheriff Richard Mack, I've had the privilege of meeting once or twice, and he is the sheriff that backed down the feds in Arizona. He took a case to the Supreme Court and
on the Brady Bill.
On the Brady Bill, and won. And he's a constitutional-minded sheriff who, just like Officer Jack McLamb, who's also worthy of a Google your noodle to Sheriff Richard Mack and Officer Jack McLamb. They both have educated law enforcement for 20, 30 years nationwide on how to conduct themselves with the public. In other words, you see some of these guys that are writing tickets all day long and harassing people. They don't teach that whatsoever. The Constitution doesn't suggest that sort of absurd notion and abuse of the public.